Round 2 action then, and we are straight into it with the spear hit Nentjes against Pascal Rupprecht, the police officer from Germany. Very, very early days for Pascal Rupprecht in his darts career, but he's got some talent, this lad. It is a very, very methodical, sort of automaton-like throw. But it's like he's learnt it out of a book on how to throw darts. It's just so straightforward, so straight, linear. Just aligns everything, and it works for him. He is a very, very consistent performer. We don't know what sort of high ceiling he could reach, but it's so early days in his career that I think it's well worth keeping an eye on him, Paul Nicholson, to see what he can do, because there's obviously a boom, and has been for many years, in darts in Germany, and Pascal Rupprecht is the kind of player who can come out of the blue and maybe end up being one of the leading lights for his nation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you've got solid technique at the start and you've got a really good mindset, it's something to build on. I don't think we judge Rupprecht on what he does 46 in the next 2 or 3 years. He could indeed just need to go through different stages to figure out what kind of player he needs to be. We lauded the fact that Ricardo Pietreczko won a European Tour event last year, but it took him years to figure out how to get to that elite level. And I think Rupprecht is probably more adapted to top-level stuff than Ricardo was 2 years into his career.
57. Yeah, and look, Geert Nentjes is a player that even the likes of Vincent van der Voort, and he doesn't say a lot of positive things about anything, let's be honest. He's tipped him to be a top 10 player in future. I do think he's got a gorgeously smooth throw, Geert Nentjes, but he hasn't had the results to justify the esteem in which he's held by people like Vincent. People like me, I think he's brilliant, but he hasn't backed that up over the last couple of years.
Yeah, he's got to stop being a Q-school yo-yo.
Yeah.
He's almost found himself in the same sort of mould as a Richie Edhouse did for years. Q-school, get through that, 2 years on the tour, don't get in the top 64, back to Q-school, immediate bounce back, let's have another 2 years.
58.
What he's got to do is get into the top 64 and then push for the top 50. If he doesn't save his card at the end of this year, you've got to ask the question as to what it is he needs to do to progress.
Yeah, I think he's in a similar position as somebody like Ted Everts, player we've already mentioned today. Former World Youth Champion, of course, but Ted was back at Q School this year, didn't get his card. But there's undoubted talent and potential there for Geert Nentjes. He takes the opening leg of the 52 checkout.
So now it's Pascal to throw first.
Definitely getting some lefties here this afternoon, Dan. We've had 3 now. Look at that throw.
140.
It's very square on, thrown with an arm that looks as if it belongs to Thor.
Well, it's so... I say it's like he's learned it out of a manual, where he's gone, oh, right, so you just throw in line, do you? And you can see down there, he actually, I'm not sure if he does it anymore, he touches lips with the flights of his darts with every single time. He might have just shortened his backswing slightly, so he doesn't do that so much. Because he must be getting through some chapstick, that lad.
It's quite common, actually, for the flight to touch something in the facial region before delivery. Glenn Durrant used to have this thing where the tip of his pear-shaped flight, when he was using nose, it would touch the end of his nose. He used to have this little red mark on the end of his nose because he was always tipping it at the end of the flight.
There was a Dutch guy who used to do it as well, and he had a run to the final day in Riesa. I'll come back to you with that.
Jordi Meeuwissen.
Jordi Meeuwissen, that was it.
That's one for the Geek Squad.
Was. 180 from Pascal Rupprecht leaves double 12. Excellent setup shot. Yeah, I think Pascal has changed his throw slightly because it isn't. He doesn't even. I'm not sure he touches his lips, and he doesn't bring it down to the very centre of his bottom lip. So something has changed with his throw, but there's nothing wrong with that because that's 4 perfect darts to end the leg.
He's actually a little bit faster as well. He's not stopping as much in that set position. He's almost made his action continuous, which seems to be the norm now. Everybody going in the Michael van Gerwen direction. You don't see many young players these days setting the dart in position, stopping, then throwing. It's very much all about the continuous motion.
58.
Well, what is interesting about Pascal, I mean, there's obviously been a big change this year with the Players' Championship events, which are your Pro Tour bread and butter stuff. If you're on the tour, you get to play in all 30 of those if you can make them. But with them going midweek, that does raise an issue for players who are just starting out or down the lower echelons who are still working full-time jobs. And there have been plenty of players who've had their say about that, who think it's wrong, it's impractical, they're unable to do it. And, you know, even the likes of Johnny Clayton said if that were the rules when I was first starting out, I might not have been able to make it work, and we wouldn't have had 4-time major champion Johnny Clayton, the ferry. But Pascal Rupprecht, as a police officer, in training, I believe he's finished that now.
81.
Over in Germany, that isn't really an issue because they have a whole system set up for their police employees where if they are elite level sports people, they can basically take all the time off they want to go and pursue that. I think something like the vast majority of their speed skaters, which is quite big over in Germany, they're all part of the police force. So that's not a problem for Pascal, it would seem.
I think that's a great system.
I'll tell you what, you wouldn't go shoplifting when it's icy around Germany, would you? Because they'll be right after you as Geert Nentjes takes double 18 out for a 2-1 lead.
Well, it's funny you mentioned speed skating because that's massive in the Netherlands. Really, really big. One of the premier nations in speed skating is Holland. And I can imagine somebody chasing you down the old canal in Amsterdam when it's a bit frozen, because they do actually have in Amsterdam times where the water is frozen, but there's nothing frozen here this year. The weather outside is very pleasant. Long may that continue so that we can have brilliant darts here at Minehead for the next 3 days.
439.
This could turn out to be on the sly a really good game. Rupprecht, you kind of think he's going to play to a decent level, and Nentjes can be very hit and miss, but the signs are relatively encouraging in the opening few legs of this.
I'm with you there, Dan. I think this has got the potential to go very long and very tight. One visit to the last 32 in Nentjes' UK Open career. That was in 2022. He lost out to Mensa Sulevic at that stage by 10 legs to 8. He was within a couple of legs of making the last 16, which is the Saturday night session.
Get you to go 121.
Well, we've seen plenty of runs from less heralded players. When Danny Noppert won, of course, Willie O'Connor and Keen Barry were in the semi-finals. Obviously, Gilding winning it last year. Gavlas in the semi-finals. Pretty much the only thing Gavlas did all last year.
64. Get you to go 68.
Saw this taken by left-hander Danny Lauby in the previous game, and he did it by hitting double 4. So there you go, carbon copy for a 3-1 lead. Looking good as the man from the Netherlands.
Game on.
Yeah, break of throw, Geert Nentjes taking control of this game for now.
Just looking at our first game of the day, where Wesley Plaisir beat Connor Scott. He mentioned at that time that he could take on his international teammate. Well, that's not going to happen because Hopai Puha took out Yellow Klassen on the main stage by 6 legs to 4.
Yeah, we're still waiting for any sort of real statement performance from anybody. The highest average we've seen so far today has been 97 and a bit, and that was Leighton Bennett, who lost to Scott Mitchell with it.
Someone's going to put in a big performance on this board today. It might even be Pascal Rupprecht. He starts to kick from here. He's going to need to do something very similar to what Northern Irishman did in the previous game. Just bridge that 2-leg gap that Rafferty did against Lowy, but after that, Lowy just found a way to get the match won. But this is purple, this patch.
Back-to-back maximums from the German, leaves himself 82, looking to break back immediately. I've done Matty Dennant a disservice, actually. He averaged 98.5. Dennant beating Jeffrey de Graaf. Good game of that, over on board 3. Follow them all on the Darkconnect system, tv.darkconnect.com, as Rupprecht eyes up 82. 180, 180, not 82 out. It was nearly 3 brilliant visits in succession. He might lose the leg.
These are the legs that really you do like. If you can win them. You see your opponent hitting 2 maximums, you think, well, I can steal this. But the fact that he's not able to gives Rupprecht a second bite of the cherry. But he doesn't find it.
And Nentjes, he went treble 13 to lead tops, and because he didn't get the treble, he then left himself a problem to try and get to a double. He's going to have to use a dart to get to the double. It's cost him a dart going that route. It did not matter in the end, and ultimately he now leads 4-1, and that there might be the game. Pascal Rupprecht with back-to-back 180s, then had 2 visits to see off the 82 he left. Couldn't do it with either of them, and he's 4-1 down. But the 180s aren't a problem at the minute.
Where things have been going for Pascal, Nentjes is probably going to follow with 2 trebles and say, you're not going to get this leg easily.
140.
Look what's happening. Nentjes is just strolling along, playing excellent stuff and not being perturbed by anything that Pascal is doing. The winner of this game takes on Ryan Meikle in the next round, and we're almost thinking at this point in time, even at this early stage of the season, what kind of season is Ryan Meikle going to have?
It's not been an encouraging start to the year for Ryan Meikle. A couple of years ago, he was looking brilliant and looked like he was really going to do things. Pascal Rupprecht is doing some serious business here.
137.
Scoring over the last couple of legs has been mind-blowingly good.
Might have to be from here.
92.
Any mistake he makes might be pounced upon by his Dutch opponent. Double 16 for an 11 dart leg. The tops didn't work in the previous leg, but double 16 does in this one. And the gap is only 2 now.
Game on.
That game that I mentioned earlier, Dan, between Leonard Gates and Conan Whitehead, it's gone to the American. 6 legs to 4.
140.
That's 2 Americans in the second round. Leonard Gates joining Danny Lorby, but Jules Van Dongen unable to overcome Thibaut Tricol. Missed match darts to beat him. That all Scottish game that we mentioned earlier as well. Darren Beveridge has beaten Jason Hogg by 6 legs to 4. Andy Bolton, however, defeated by Owen Bates by 6 legs to 5. Awful lot of games this afternoon that have gone long. Owen Bates is this part of the world, isn't he? That's where he hails from, is that right?
He is, southwest.
Always interesting, the UK Open, to see what groups come down. This is where the hardcore darts fans are. Don't let anybody tell you it's the World Match Play. It takes commitment to come down to Minehead and Butlins for basically 5 days.
It's always interesting when you arrive on Thursday afternoon and you see people who are already here. You can figure out how long their journey has been by how long they stretch when they get out of the car.
Yeah, it's an endurance test getting down here. But if you do make it down here, you are, congrats, a fanatic.
140.
And you will be treated to some very intriguing stuff. And this game is really competitive. That one leg where Rupprecht went back-to-back 180s and then made a mess of things for the next 2 visits. It might end up costing him. Double 12 for Nentjes. Brilliant response from the Dutchman. It was a 12-darter from Rupprecht in the previous leg. And then Nentjes hits back with a 14-darter of his own. He leads 5-2. He's averaging high 90s here. It's very, very impressive.
59.
It really is. I think Vincent van der Voort might have a point, but this could be an infuriating display from Nentjes because he's playing so well. that people who know him that well, like Vincent does, you might be asking the question, well, why doesn't he do it more often?
He's still young. He's got an awful lot of experience. He's been around for many years. But he's still a young man, Geert Nentjes. You never know when they're going to hit their peak, darts players.
I just wonder if he might start to blossom the same way that Luke Humphreys did when his development tour days were done. You saw Humphreys win the World Youth Championship, and then pretty much as soon as he was not playing on the development tour, he kicked into that senior gear.
Yeah, the roadmap on how to be the best darts player in the world, Luke Humphreys has followed it to a T. Brilliant on the development tour, one of the most successful players ever, won the World Youth Championship, won on the Pro Tour, then on the Euro Tour, then won majors, then the World.
I think it's fair to say that the development tour works now. Look at the top 4 in the world. Humphreys, Van Gerwen and Aspinall, all products of the development tour. There's no reason why Geert Nentjes can't do what they are doing now in the next 5 years. There's absolutely no reason why that can't happen.
59.
It doesn't look like he's going to win it in this leg. Another one in there. He's been great at following those darts in the treble 20, but he's unable to do so on this occasion.
428.
I'm not sure there's any difference between Rupprecht practicing at home or with one of his buddies
96.
and being at the UK Open playing a great Dutch player like Nentjes. I'm not even sure this young lad sweats. He might be sweating in a second because this is a match opportunity for Nentjes.
145.
It is an opportunity. It's a slim one. Too slim.
43. Pascal, you require 4.
Double 2 got a bit of action earlier in one of our previous matches with Tricol and Van Dongen. But it's double 1 this time.
Pascal Rupprecht.
Oh, it was actually Plaisir game, wasn't it? Yeah, 4 double 2s in that game. This is a remarkable mentality that Rupprecht has. It's almost like he's just strolling around a library.
He doesn't. Nothing seems to faze him at all. I remember him making his debut on the Euro Tour and he got ironed out 6-0 from a brilliant display from his opponent. And he just said, well, something I'll learn from. And then within a couple of weeks he was back on the Euro Tour stages and gave a much better account of himself. He just seems to be approaching it in a very matter-of-fact, sensible way. He's not expecting the earth straight away, but I think he's got potential. I think he looks like he's going to go out in round 2 here in his opening game, but I think he still walks away from this game with some credit. He's missed a fair few doubles. It's cost him a couple of legs.
100.
I know I've gone early with this, but look at the way that Pascal plays the game. Someone who could definitely win the PDC Europe Super League later in the year.
57.
Look what it did for Hempel a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he will, if he's outside the top 64, he will be allowed to compete in that if he's in his first 2 years of the tour card.
96.
I've changed the rules for that in the last year or so for those.
The right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, you go and tell Jeff Smith and Matt Campbell that about the North American Championship.
Let's not get too political. It's only Friday afternoon. This is a
about
match
this?
chance. It's a match dart.
Good.
It's a match win for Geert Nentjes. What a great way to finish. That was a stunning display from that young man who will be thrilled with the level of performance in beating Pascal Rupprecht by 6 legs to 3. And going through to the next round, it's going to be an all left-hand affair as he takes on Ryan Meikle in round number 3. One more match for Nentjes and Meikle this afternoon will put them in the hat for the UK Open draw for Friday night. But as for us, we're going to have more round 2 action coming up next as Kevin Dutz will watch on and see who wins between Sedlacek and Robert Owen.